So, if you were here last week, we talked about 3 reasons why creatives struggle to connect with supporters. We talked about how the excitement is there, the creative work is released, we're excited, we're stoked, we're ready to engage with our fans, our supporters, and then it falls flat. You don't get the response you're looking for. You're kind of worried about why it didn't connect as you anticipated. And we talked about the reasons why this occurs. We talked about number one, having a self centered approach. Number two, we talked about how your work doesn't solve a deeper problem. And then number three, we talked about the work being ego driven and not service driven. So those were the 3 reasons why you may feel like your work didn't connect with people as you thought that it should have. Mainly the people that you're aiming to target and your supporters. And then we define what a supporter, a potential supporter is. And that's an individual who engages with your art and takes action on it. And some of those actions we talked about last week, we talked about if someone, for example, signs up on your event page and attends a curated event, if you receive a sale from a vinyl, for example, on an album release, you got more open rates on your email list. You got more shares on your social media content. You're seeing people engaging and responding with the things that you're putting out. So those are potential supporters and people that are coming into the ecosystem of your art and your creative practice. So for this week, though, we're going to talk about how to shift from struggling to connect with potential supporters and build deeper connections, lasting engagement, and we want to turn passive supporters into active ones. So, number one, I think this is the most important one that I can say to date, honestly. It's having an audience centered approach. It's having an approach where the supporter is at the focal point. They are the center of the interaction, the engagement, and of the creative work. What does that do? It makes your creative works relatable, it's inclusive, it's supporter centric. Instead of just telling your story in the art, you find ways to invite the audience in while connecting your supporters' daily narrative into your creation. So you want to ask yourself, how does my work reflect my audience experiences? A perfect example of this is Nas' first album, Illmatic. Uh, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. I believe that it's a beautifully curated piece of art, from the producers and from his content and from how he approached the actual album and the creation of it, the things he talked about on the album. He spoke about an inner city black experience. It was a part of the hip hop golden age culture. It spoke to black identity in a way that we've never seen it spoke about. But the thing about that album that made it so unique and so dope was that it reflected everyday life of a kid in Queensbridge that reflected in inner cities around the world, more particularly in the United States. If you were a young kid and you were growing up in the inner city, Chicago, LA, Houston, DC, New York, wherever you were, you could see yourself in the creative work that Nas had put out. I mean, it was very intricate, it was very detailed, it was very sophisticated, and it spoke to that person. It spoke to who you were at that particular age at that time and your experiences growing up in those inner city environments. And that's why it's so revered today. That's why it's considered one of the best hip hop albums of all time, because when you listen to that album, you literally feel like you're right there with them. You feel like you're right in the mix and you can see elements of yourself in him at that particular age, rhyming about the things he was talking about, at that particular time. And this has been over 30 years. This album came out in 1994, and here we are still today in 2025 talking about how amazing this piece of art is. And again, what is the benefit of having an audience-centered approach? People feel emotionally and personally invested in the success of the art. They want to share your work because they see themselves in it. Your work reflects them, and they want other people to know about who they are. Your work represents their inner feelings, thoughts, and emotions. Again, having an audience-centered approach, that's the main point of it. It now people can see themselves in it. They're ingratiated into the music. They get excited, and they get to share that with other people because they want people to know about elements of who they are. And if your work represents that, they're going to use that as a catalyst to build that connection, which furthers the art, which solves their problem, and getting people to see who they are at their core inner self. So that's number one. Number two, you want to make work that solves the supporters' problems. When you create work that's meant to be for the public, you want to ask yourself, what does my audience gain from this? How do my creative works help them? Whether your work is entertaining, inspirational, educational, or pushing creative boundaries, or transformative, it should speak to your supporters' problems directly and solve their issues. One of my favorite artists who does an amazing job at doing this is Spike Lee. So Spike Lee, his films, they solve a need essentially for African American viewers where they get to see themselves reflected on the screen with value, with dignity, and with creativity. Even though he covers a wide range of Afrocentric art, it focuses on the Black experience, the diaspora, the African diaspora. It's very direct, honest, and it solves the pain point, which is Black self-reflection on screen, unapologetically, in a mainstream American world. So when Spike Lee, what makes his film so unique is that at a particular time leading up to him as a filmmaker, he got out of the bounds of Hollywood and he started to create from a Black experience that was very Afrocentric, through whether it was Do the Right Thing, School Days, Malcolm X, I mean, you name it, More Better Blues. All of those films spoke directly to who we were as African Americans. It spoke our language. It articulated our dialogue. It highlighted our walks of life, and it was very specific, and it was unapologetic. And that's why Spike Lee is so revered when it comes to being a great filmmaker, because when you get to see yourself played out in his films, in his art, again, you feel connected, you feel honored, if you will, and you feel inspired. So, what is the benefit of that? You get more meaningful support. You get increased engagement and supporter trust. They'll be excited about your future works and begin to operate as early adopters to your creative works, promoting and marketing your art within their circles of influence. And that's what we want. We want to evangelize our supporters. We want to have them essentially, metaphorically, spread the gospel. We want them to spread the word of our creative works, and they spread it with more enthusiasm, with more joy, with more passion, when they feel connected and see themselves in it. And then number three, you want to let your art be service driven and not ego driven. You want to ask yourself, how does my art add value to my supporter's life? And there's a couple of shifts that you have to make here. You want to shift from how can I be seen to how can I serve? You want to shift from look at me to I see me in them. You want to shift from I am great to we are one. We create space of inclusion, not isolation. The value in creativity comes from togetherness, not separatism. It's human focus and not self-focused art. What is the benefit? It builds stronger connections with your supporters. You get more loyalty. More people want to stand behind it. They want to be a part of it. They want to be seen with it. And then supporters begin to personally, again, evangelize your creative works in their circle of influence. Again, that is the goal. That is what we're aiming for. We want people to stand behind our work. We want people to engage our work. We want people to share our work. We want people to support it, whether monetarily or through any type of other means of support or metrics that we would like to use to show that people are truly engaged with what we're actually creating and what we're doing. And that comes at the space of service. You have to serve. You have to see other people and other issues outside of yourself, you have to see those first, and you have to put that into the art. You have to bring people into the art from that perspective, because that's the only way that they'll listen, that they'll pay attention, because it's speaking to their needs and their problems. And we live in a world where we want to solve our needs, we want to solve our problems, and we want people to know, and we want to know that people care. We want to know that people are concerned. We want to know that people have solutions to what we feel, and your creative work needs to be designed and created and established with that viewpoint. So let's recap our 4 solutions. Again, you want to have an audience-centered approach. You want to make work that solves the supporters' problems. And you want to let your art be service-driven and not ego-driven. You want to implement these shifts into your creative practice. Again, you'll notice immediately you have increased engagement and interest in your creative works. Whether it's social media, in person, via email, the engagement will surely increase over time if you implement these particular steps. So again, I want to call you higher, man. I want you to follow these steps, and I want you to let me know how your experience has been connecting with people, following these particular steps, being audience focused, again, being service driven and not ego driven, and solving your supporters' problems. I want you to create your work from that vantage point, that perspective, and I want you to talk to me about the difference. Guarantee you're going to see a difference in that particular approach. If you implement these steps, there'll be more excitement. There'll be more joy about what you create. It'll be more engagement around what you create. And that is a fact. That is guaranteed. When you look out for other people and you focus on them and take yourself out of the mix and have a supportive, focused approach, you will connect more and you will get more supporters. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all. I'm looking forward to see your creative works get increased engagement and people love them and support them and honor them as the way it should be. Again, I hope this helped. This has been amazing. I'm Neak. Be blessed. See you back here again next week.